handout that had been prepared by Thrivent, and that people were trying to apply for Thrivent funds to help pay for the projects. At that time, the organ room was gone, and the narthex was in the process of being updated. The youth room, sanctuary, and narthex are also in that first phase. In March, they would begin working on the stairway and youth room. There was some discussion that we may want to have one person that organizes all those applications to Thrivent, so there's not an overlap with what projects we're applying for, and that members can apply every 6 months for an action fund. Thrivent also has grants that Family of Christ can apply for to help with larger expenses. Micah shared that Jane, David, and Micah are willing to work together to keep track of who has applied for what and help with those applications. At that time, the status of the funds for the capital campaign, $327,991.50 had been donated, and the balance now is $271,957.85 after some bills had been paid. We had to pay the architect. So the old church fund, $1,620 had been given. Pastor John had commented that we accomplished the original capital campaign amount of $300,000. Okay, sorry, I thought it was echoing.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's all right, it's just a little faint.
Okay, there is a, the $300,000 was our first step towards meeting our $2 million goal. Pastor John made a note to thank Kate for running for church council. At that time, we made a motion was made to adjourn the meeting.
Are there any changes or additions to the minutes? If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes as written. Myron, a second? Lance? The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item we're going to cover is a longer item. It's the budget. All right.
And Ron, could you grab your mic as well?
Could I what?
You had to grab the mic and bring it around so it's right next to your face.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So what was sent out, I had a summary of the considerations for the budget. The first thing, well, I guess, kind of talking through the budget or process for preparing the budget. I did put a initial draft together for the church council, and then put a budget planning committee together. So we went through the budget a few times, and then it was finally approved at the last January council meeting. So some of the main things for the considerations in this year's budget are obviously with the retirement of, or the pending retirement of Pastor John, we will no longer receive income from Mosaic that we've traditionally received. So when we were considering the wages and salary for our pastoral services for the year, we're basically what we decided to do was carry forward the original amount budgeted, and that will take care of paying Pastor John through April, and then interim pastor services for the remainder of the year. So as we get into the budget, you can see kind of how that's broke out. Some of those expenses at this time are still unknown. So during discussion with the church council, we thought it would be best to keep that essentially the same moving forward, except for wages that were paid out specifically for the Mosaic services. So as Tammy read in the previous meeting minutes, there was a desire to increase staff wages, and we did include that in this year's planning, increasing the wages for our secretary, ministries coordinator, and webmaster positions by $1 per hour. And then we also raised the janitorial weekly rate from $55 a week to $70 a week. Then the budget also includes 2 new positions that we've been utilizing, one of which, the video editor. Clinton Brill is currently filling that role. That was necessary with the addition of online services due to COVID. And then another thing that will be utilized moving forward is the sign language interpreter. And Kathy is taking on that responsibility. And we are going to be paying $25 a week, and that will be coming from the Solid State Fund. It's included in the budget, but that's how the intent of that is to be paid out of that fund. We did add a new line item for computer and electronic equipment maintenance and replacement under church properties, allocating $1,000 a year for those expenses, as we from time to time have those pop up and need to replace a laptop or piece of equipment that we use for the services. So thought it would be prudent to add that. And then, as I mentioned, the income does, the Mosaic income that we had previously, or that we're currently and will no longer be receiving, was $22,400 a year. So that was a significant amount of income that we received in addition to congregational giving. So that you'll see here, rather unusual that we would put together a budget with a significant shortfall, but all things considered, with the increases we've made, then the lack of that income moving forward, we're projecting a shortfall of $26,541.80. This is based on historical giving and budgeted expenses, and that really highlights the need for additional giving from the congregation to make up that shortfall. We thought it was best to go ahead and project that in the budget so that everybody is fully aware of what we're facing moving forward. So I mentioned 2020 was a very unique year due to COVID-19. The majority of the 2021 budget was carried forward and from the approved 2020 budget, which was based off giving and expenses from 2019, as that was a much more normal year and what we're hoping for moving forward. Then, as I mentioned, the approval process thus far, and then we'll be asking for approval of the budget at this time. So just going through the budget, I think everyone received a email copy, or we had copies here in person for the 2021 budget. If you look at that budget, that you'll see there's 3 columns: what we accepted for the budget in 2020. Then the middle column is 2020 actuals from February through December, and then January expenses and income were estimated as this report was put together prior to the end of the month. And then 2021 is what is being proposed for in that column 3, that's what's being proposed for this year's budget. So if you look at the bottom of the second page, you'll see that the negative $26,541.80 that I mentioned previously is listed there. You can see that in the middle column, we're just coming in slightly short of, I mean, we're actually right on track with, or even a little better than what we had budgeted for a shortfall. So as you look through here, you'll see that there were some areas where we spent a little bit more, some areas where we spent a little bit less because activities just couldn't take place. But the congregation continued giving and kept us on track really, really well through 2020. So I've kind of highlighted significant changes in the budget. If you compare and really we're looking at, as we've discussed before, when we talk about the budget categories, really the bold numbers at the bottom of each section are really what we're trying to keep track on with our budget. We, within those categories, the different line items may fluctuate slightly, but just try to keep each category on track. That's what we look at, for managing the budget. So I guess I'll just kind of read through the proposed budget category line items. So the total income projected for 2021, considering not having the Mosaic income, is $136,673.20. The pastoral wages with paying Pastor John through April, and then interim pastor services proposed $75,901. Other paid staff, we're looking at $32,890. Total office expenses carried forward, which was previously approved, of $7,449. The total evangelism carried forward as last year, $1,900. Fellowship carried forward just slightly less with $2,800. Lay ministries carries forward the same at $2,700. And total church properties, we've seen slight increase, and then we added the fund for computer maintenance, or computer and electronic equipment maintenance and replacement. So that went up from $17,600 to $18,750. Stewardship carried forward at $250. And then total benevolence, we kept the same at $15,500. And so that puts us at a total of expenses expected for 2021 at $163,215, with that previously mentioned shortfall of negative $26,541.80. So that's essentially what we came up with for the budget this year, and have some work to overcome that projected shortfall. I guess I'll pause and see if there's any questions on what we've covered so far. Okay, and then I guess, go ahead. Yes.
I think we probably should make mention too, we were intending to put some of the expenses some of the other expenses out there, and you did submit a report for the expenses summary for This Old Church and the capital campaign and some of the other major items. This will be put into the January newsletter, but I think if I could quote just a little bit, that This Old Church spent through December the total giving since December 2019 for This Old Church, the repairs of the church, were $9,500, and the total expenses through December were $13,944, which does not include Thrivent money that was spent or extras, which came in. The capital campaign, the total giving since its inception is now $360,000, and the current balance of the capital campaign, which it means the land out on Avenue M, is $335,668. So just to add those into the financial reports for this year.
Yep. Thank you, Pastor John.
We also had a question from Jantha Jameson. She asked, will we receive Mosaic income through April?
Yes. Yep, that is included in the projected income. We did include that. Yes. Thank you for the question.
as far as being able to fund the shortfall, the council has talked about Plan A, Plan B, et cetera. And we do have money available for operating expenses in our investment category. So we do have some money available. We don't know what the future will bring. There may be a need to cut expenses down the road. But the council felt very strong that the last thing you want to do is start cutting programs. We want to grow, we don't want to shrink. So it's going to be important that we communicate to the congregation how we're doing throughout the year and make sure that we're addressing any shortfall. Any other discussion on the budget? Great job, Ron.
Hey, can you hear me? This is Barbara. I'm at work, sorry. I just want to let you know that I did spend the Wednesday Weeder money. I just happened to find the receipts in my year-end stuff. So if you think I didn't spend $750, I spent $750. So just so you don't think that that isn't unused.
Thank you. Any other questions? Then do I hear a motion to approve the operating budget as presented? Second? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great.
Okay, thank you. And we did want to mention we'll have more information to come in announcements. I believe that we are looking at a few wish list items, including pew chairs, and then also, oh yeah. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I guess we did have a few wish list items, that we'd like people to consider giving towards coming up in the new year. Some of those, or a lot of those items relate to a project to improve the in-person service and the online service. And Micah and Gary Stratman have put together some cost related to that. I guess, I believe we'll have more information available on that. There's some continued discussion along with improved lighting, and then also pew chairs. So, the pew chairs, we estimate between $50 and $100 per chair. We want to get good quality chairs that, hopefully the better quality chairs will be able to, as we do move towards the new building, we'll be able to, better quality chair will be able to continue being produced. So hopefully we can find, if we need additional matching chairs, so we don't waste or I guess have to start over from scratch. But I think we'll communicate more of that through, we'll talk about that, but I think the financial corner that we've been including in the monthly mailing, we could include more detail about that. So just want to make first mention of that anyway. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, next will be the nominating committee. And Barb?
Okay, we have two who served one term and who are willing to serve another term, and that would be Jill Peterson and Ron Kari. Going off the council is Tammy Fry, who served 2 terms, and Tammy Hayden, who served 1 term. So the nominating committee, who is myself, Mitzi Gifford, Seth Gruber, and Gary Stratman, along with Pastor John, We nominate these people for council, and that would be Jill Peterson, Ron Kari, Kate Reynolds, and Seth Gruber.
Are there any other nominations from the floor?
Are there any other nominations from the floor?
If not, I guess I'd like to just approve or vote on the slate of members as is instead of individual and move forward. Yes.
I move to accept the slate of
Seconded. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We also need to put together a nominating committee for next year. So any volunteers, I think, contact Pastor John or myself, and because we don't, there's a lot of unknowns at this point. Okay.
Do we want to talk about the synod too?
Yes.
Okay. We also need one male and one female for the synod, which is in June. It will be an online day. It will be from 9 to 4. Last year, they canceled it. Gary Stratman and Mitzi Gifford were going to go. Gary can make it this year, but Mitzi does have another event. So we do need at least one more female.
I guess going forward, if that would work for somebody, again, contact Pastor John or one of the council members before that date.
June 5th.
It's going to be online and from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on a Saturday, so it doesn't require any travel or anything.
What's the date?
June 5th.
Thank you.
9 to 4. Okay, thanks.
Any other old business we need to cover? Any new business? Any other questions on this old church or the whole project? You know, we've come a long way. I mean, you look at what the inside has looked like now. It is great. A lot of work. Big thanks to Steph and everyone else that's been able to put aside COVID and contribute time. Okay, last item is Pastor John's retirement. And we thought it'd be good to have a discussion. There's been quite a few questions concerning what's going to happen, what the process is. People have maybe a little anxiety associated with the transition. For those that haven't been involved with it before, it is quite a process. And I feel more comfortable this time around because the Senate is much more actively involved in the whole process, where 32 years ago, 33 years ago, we didn't have as much support in selecting a new pastor. We were pretty much on our own for week-to-week supply pastors, and there were several of us that, including Dave Middleton, that would give sermons because we didn't have a pastor. But it won't be like that this time. So, John, when is your date of retirement?
I said it's after Easter. I did. I said it's after Easter. I did not say. I did not say what year.
2023.
It'll be, and we still have not targeted the exact date, but it'll be April, sometime April. I'm thinking probably towards the fourth week of April. Easter this year is April the 4th. And I wanted to give the congregation several extra weeks after Easter rather than making Easter itself, the thing about retirement, because we'll have some tears, we'll have some opportunity to be able to share. And I do want to see the congregation coming out of COVID, coming back together. And being able to be the people of God as much in person as we are online. So it'd be after tax date. So
Elaine says congratulations.
What can we expect that first Sunday that you're not here?
Chaos.
You better stay.
But it's the same chaos that happens every Sunday. You just don't see the chaos. You'll see a little more of as we try to pull things together. My sermon today is going to talk about how there are, that even in the synagogue, the presence of evil can try to diminish what we are, tear things apart. And that we're called to be listening to those voices that would diminish us, that would tell us what we are not, that would tell us what we've done wrong, that would tell us that somehow we are not capable enough. Every Sunday, there are all sorts of voices that come inside of us in any way, not just the congregation, but also the preacher. What authority do I have to even be a pastor here? And the authority comes through the Spirit and through the people of God. This congregation it has the potential of doing fine. It is going to make mistakes like any other congregation does, like any other people do. And it will learn through the mistakes, and it will forgive. It will be able to forgive those mistakes. But one thing that I do want the congregation to know, that as far as the Nebraska Synod is concerned, that's the group that we belong to. Some 200 congregations in the Synod with Bishop Brian Maas and our Bishop Representative Steve Meising. They want to make sure that there is pastoral presence in the congregation in some way to be able to help the congregation navigate. And make sure that there is pastoral presence to be able to deal with all those things that will fluctuate and change.
Here we go.
The Senate will assign an interim pastor during this period. Why don't you go into that process a little bit?
There are two processes that will be taking place. We don't immediately call another pastor, and I'll talk a little bit about why that's best not to call a pastor right away. But instead, there will be an interim pastor, there will be interim pastoral presence. It may be a parish ministry associate. It may be a pastor who's trained. It could be First Lutheran at one point had an interim pastor who came out of the Presbyterian tradition, and Steve Brownlee did a tremendous job with First Lutheran. There are interim pastors that are now trained to help congregations navigate the process of change, and do it in a way that lets the congregation know it's okay, it's a time of growth, it's a good time. The interim pastor will be chosen through the bishop's office in consultation with the Church Council of Family of Christ. That's not a call process. It is instead rather a navigation for that interim process. The next question would be, how long can the interim take place? I've seen interims take place over 3 years. I've seen some interims be just months. I feel like in Family of Christ, it probably would be best if the interim process be a lengthy time to allow the congregation to navigate through transition of 32 years that we've had together as pastor and congregation. That then in the process after the interim is in place, then the congregation will go through a call process. And the call process is far more congregational rather than council. The congregation then will go through a time of deliberation. They'll be analyzing some of their history and analyzing their mission. What is it that they want to do? What is it that they feel called to do as a congregation? I appreciated that Family of Christ, when I first came here, was not trying to mimic First Lutheran Church or any other congregation, but it was struggling to understand what is our mission in this South Side, in particular of Kearney. What's our mission as a congregation? And I know it was a more difficult time because the congregation was younger and the ELCA was younger, and we didn't have a lot of support. There's a lot more history now. But that will pull together a document that will list things for the ELCA to be able to put out probes across Nebraska, but also across the nation for pastors that may be interested in the challenges of Family of Christ, the growth of Family of Christ, the things that the pastors may see. This is their time of being called together as a congregation. You will receive, as a congregation, you'll receive a list of names of people that the synod has gathered and pulled together. The bishop's office gathers and pulls together, so that you'll have a chance to look at a number of people through your call committee and then through the congregation itself. And then will come the process of call. In the Lutheran Church, and in particular in the ELCA, pastors are not appointed or given by the bishop. The call comes from the congregation itself. And for the congregation to have that voice, there needs to be time to think through what is it we are seeing ourselves do and be as a congregation. Is that kind of answer?
It is.
I went longer than my 5 minutes.
Is there a pool of interim pastors available, or is there going to be, because interim pastors are usually semi-retired.
Not always, not always.
So that you're looking at a part-time position, 3-4 days a week, maybe?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You would have somebody who would be responsible for some of the teaching ministries of the church, some of the pastoral ministries of the church, probably not as much the administrative areas of the congregation. Is there a pool? Well, there was, but we do have clergy shortages right now in the ELCA, as all denominations do. Just having pastors for enough congregations. There's been a fairly significant tap on the regular interim pastors. Interim pastors do have a training. It's not as though somebody comes in because they're just retired and they can be an interim pastor. there is a training for what the process is for an interim pastor. And one of the key things is an interim pastor should be ready to say no when the congregation says, oh, we'd like to have you as our pastor. The interim pastor is doing interim pastor work, and they try to make that clear that they are not being considered for the pastoral ministry for that congregation.
And being through that before, that is really easy to have that feeling, because you
There's-
go week after week, especially when you don't have even a regular supply pastor. You get somebody go, oh my gosh, let's get him,
Yeah, or her.
her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in some cases, the interim pastor may be somebody local within driving distance. Other cases, the interim pastor may require us to provide housing for him or her. So those are things we have to keep in mind. It made it a little more difficult in the budget to project exactly how much the interim pastor is going to cost us. But we feel we covered that.
And when I
expense
checked with the Synod about our process of taking equivalent of my salary for the whole year and what would be regular, and using that as just a model figure for what an interim would cost. The Synod felt that was probably fair. You know, that would probably be realistic.
Do we work with the interim pastor at all as far as the call process to put together
No.
a job description or a wish list or anything? Okay. So
The interim
he is-
pastor is trying to stay away from the call process. They're
Okay.
trying to make sure that the congregation follows the call process and perhaps uses and maintains, is able to help the congregation maintain program and be able to do the ministry while it is going through the call process, and make sure that it has worship, that it has the worship life. But the interim pastor is not on the call committee, or really considers themselves the part of the calling process.
Do we have then a contact person that the council will work with?
Right
through this
now, it'd be
process?
Reverend Steve Meising, who
Steve.
is the bishop's assistant for this area. There are some other contacts too that we may be able to have. And Steve did say that he was going to talk with the new council in February, right after we had this election today.
Okay.
So
When is the call committee usually formed?
that varies. I think usually the call committee too is made up of people that are not on the council, with perhaps maybe one liaison or one person from the council. The call committee is a separate entity from the congregation. What I've seen in other churches is the call committee tends to operate even quietly from necessarily the congregation. They give some reports, but they try to operate in a way that is, going to be able to allow them to concentrate on the process itself. There's a number of things they have to navigate. I'm looking back to you guys. I think with First Lutheran, the call committee tended to operate kind of independent of the council, didn't it? Yeah, which I think is healthy. They'll give reports to the council, but they operate independently. And I think for Family of Christ, and here I'm interjecting my opinion, I think for Family of Christ, the way the congregation goes, I think we want to settle in with an interim pastor, take a little bit of time, and then start a call committee, rather than trying to rush things right away.
Who appoints the call committee?
That's a good question. I believe that, I think it is the church council appoints the call committee. But again, they try to make sure that it is separate from the church council itself, so that there is some independence.
When will we know we're ready to form a call committee, to call a pastor? When will we know we've gone through the process long enough?
In the words of Yoda, you will know. Excellent. Thank you, Lane. Yeah, Lane just said that Steve Meising will be an integral part of that. Yeah. You've seen that, I think, happen with First Lutheran in North Platte, or just at least some. No, you didn't? Okay. Never have been? But I think what I've seen with some other congregations is it really comes in conjunction in conjunction with the synod office, trying to help clarify and see where the congregation is at. It will be the council decision. The call is a congregational thing. My call came through you as a congregation. The synod helped, and they gave my name to you as a congregation, which, by the way, I was initially going to turn down. You know, the synod did a good job of saying, take a look at it. You and I remember Jerry Schaff saying, take a look at this congregation. And I did take a look. And I do want to tell you, one of the things that intrigued me about Family of Christ was not that you had your act together. It was, in fact, you wanted to accomplish some things, but you wanted to be creative about doing it. And I think that's been a good mesh for us for 30 years.
What were your hesitations? What were your fears coming in as the second
pastor? Yeah, you and I talked about this, knowing that Jerry Jeffries had been the first pastor of the congregation. There is a trepidation on the part of anybody coming in after a first pastor, because the first pastor is somewhat equivalent to God, you know, for the congregation. I've got news for you. Any pastor looking at this congregation is going to look at, Goswine was there for 30 years. I'm not sure.
32 years is a long time.
Yeah.
On one hand, it's positive because some churches will go through this process every 5 years. They'll boot the pastor and pastors, if you've ever been job hunting and you look at a company, those are the things you look at. How long do they retain their employees? This is really a job search in many ways. And we have a lot of positive things going for us because we do not have a history of running pastors off. Pastors, the future pastor I see is somebody who's confident enough to come in and say, yeah, I can follow somebody that's been here 32 years. I can contribute. And so in some ways it's positive that you've been here 32 years.
I think don't be ashamed of saying, well, this is what we didn't accomplish, but we wished we did. I think a pastor is more interested, let me rephrase that. I think the pastor that you're going to want is more interested in doing that than coming in to a place that has everything all together. And you and I, and I'm looking at everybody here, know we don't have it all together. But it has been a wonderful journey, and it can be for somebody else too. Now, that being said, I think please be aware of, you've got a note here that you gave for me, that it will be difficult not to compare or say, Pastor John would never have done it that way, or Pastor John never did it that way. Please, let's get that out of our vocabulary right now. We'll practice that, okay? That there are going to be some things that are different. And there will be some things that are just part of our, for those of you who've been farmers, you know that the cows tend to follow the same path going back to the barn. we may have to learn some new paths,
In pastors talk, and you think, well, I know for a fact because I interact with several other pastors, we have a good reputation, and that's going to get around when the call process gets into it deeper. They're going to look and they're going to talk to other pastors, and we're going to get favorable reviews from the existing pastors out there. So that's going to help us in the long term.
And I would say those favorable reviews are not, again, meaning that, okay, this is a congregation that has it all together. Those favorable reviews are that this congregation does, they operate together, and they tend to see what some of the issues are, what the problems are, and gradually they work on them together. That people see that there's a spirit of the body of Christ here, but not that things are perfect for the congregation. I think it's healthy. I think there's a healthy review of Family of Christ.
You've been pretty much the glue, go-to person, the leader, etc. During this interim period, next year, 2 years, who knows? Who are we going to lean on?
And, okay, let's take COVID, for example. COVID drastically changed the way we do everything. And I think at first we probably felt like, where are we going in the future? And honestly, we didn't know. Secondly, we didn't know how to rely on some of our old ways of doing things. We did have to change some things. We found there were new energies, new bloods, new willingness to serve in different capacities that we had not been seeing before. That can happen again and again and again. The Spirit will give us the Spirit will give us an awareness of there's other parts of the body of Christ that need to serve. I'm going to start by admitting I missed some of those areas in my 30 years. I missed some of those areas that maybe we neglected to allow some ministry to develop. And I will also acknowledge there's some other areas that we developed that we would never have thought of developing before. The Spirit led us in some marvelous ways, and the Spirit will continue to do that. Randy, I think there's a couple of other questions that you had. One of the questions I thought was really a key. How do you talk to me? Because I'm still planning to be in this area.
Is it a cardinal sin to say hi to you on the street?
Yeah, will it be a cardinal sin to say hi? No, it will not. We will be talking in weeks to come about the boundaries that we should have. I will not be the pastor here anymore, so I do not want to be, I don't want to be meddling in terms of the issues that the congregation is doing, is involved in. But you know me well enough that I tend to love having my fingers in all sorts of different pies. Please feel free. Here's my hand. Slap it. Okay? And just say, no, we're not going to talk about that. But we can talk with each other. We'll be able to talk with each other. I intend to continue my ministry with Mosaic in a part-time capacity while we try to especially move out of the COVID situation for the Mosaic ministry. And Judy, Phyllis, and I, and Julie, we're all here in Kearney. We will still be part of the community. I know the bishop's office is already looking at targeting me for helping in some different congregations on Sundays to keep me occupied. But also you're going to find a rich connection, I think, with some other congregations. I want you to see it put this way. I am not leaving Family of Christ. I'm called to something new, and that is retirement, but it's called into something new. And Family of Christ is not leaving me. You are called too. We are called at this point into something new. How that new is going to shape, it's not our privilege to know. Instead, it's built on us trusting that God is going to work, this something new, and we will find joy in it. That joy will come also with a sense of grieving, because you better know it's going to be hard doing that separation. It will be hard, and we need to acknowledge that. We've had 32 years together, dude.
You know, you made a comment to me that when you first accepted the position, the call, you thought maybe 5 years.
I thought I was going to be here for 5 years. I had a 5-year plan, and I am still 32 years later working on the first year of my 5-year plan.
Okay. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of other questions, and we will not hesitate to have another meeting, probably March, April timeframe. So put your questions together, and
Please.
we'll address them at that time. You know, with this, I just want to reiterate, we've done a lot in this congregation. And you look at First Lutheran, they were on mission subsidy for 50 years. We were on subsidy for 15. So that's something to be proud of.
Mm-hmm. It took them 70 years before they built their new building, you know, which was over on Avenue G. You know, we're looking at a new building, and we feel, of course, frustrated because things have just not allowed everything to happen the way we expected. But ours is not to try and do things perfectly. Ours is to do things faithfully.
Thank you.
I do encourage your questions. Please don't be shy about saying some things, including some things. I wouldn't mind if you said, gee, Pastor John, I wish in the 30 years you would have done this. I don't mind doing that, because I think we need to also acknowledge some hurts as well as some joys that we have, and being able to recognize that God still pulls us together in that. So.
Well, if there's, need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Sing closing prayer.
I'll close in prayer. Kathy, I'll go ahead and sign it. Okay. Lord God, we thank you for the ministry that we have together as the people of God. You have called us the body of Christ. And we have witnessed, we have experienced how this body grows, always focused not on our own efforts, not on our own works, not even on our failures, but instead on your promise to be with us, to guide us, and to help us to see how your Spirit moves through us. Be with us on this journey as we worship together. Continue to encourage us in the love of Christ Jesus. Amen. Thank you all. Bye, and thank you all for being online. And we will be on our Zoom service, on our Facebook service in just a few moments.
Thank you.
I did recall the meeting did get recorded, so if people can see it, it's there.